Right, good afternoon, everyone. Can I welcome you to this afternoon's meeting of Planning Committee B? If I just introduce myself, I'm Dave Merritt. I'm chair of this committee for this year. We have the head of planning, development manager, Gareth Arnold. Democratic Services, Rhys Williams on my right, and the solicitor, Jodie Ingram. In terms of this afternoon's meeting, can I ask you to ensure that any phones are switched to silence? In terms of any alarms, fire alarms and so on, if there is one, will you please exit the room and via the front of the building as reasonably promptly as possible. There are toilets next to this room, just down the corridor. Some members may be using laptops. The council tries to encourage members not to use paper. Most of us, unfortunately, still are. But those members who are using laptops will hopefully be using them for the purposes of reading their papers and contributing to this afternoon's meeting. We have microphones. Please speak when into the microphone. There is a microphone button in the middle which goes green when the facility is on, and please switch it off when you have finished speaking. In terms of this afternoon's meeting, this is a business meeting of the council held in public. It is not a public meeting. In terms of public speakers, can I ask you to keep to the time limits, to be respectful, and only to speak at the appropriate point when you have been asked to speak. We normally have adjournments between the planning items for comfort and other reasons. Hopefully we will not have any adjournments during an item, but if an adjournment does take place during an item, members are required not to discuss the applications in any way whatsoever while we're having that adjournment. In terms of the individual plan applications, we have a process for these. Officers talk through the plans. The committee members then ask questions on the plans. Officers will provide an update on the report. We will then take any public speakers who are registered for that item and any committee member questions to the speaker. We will then move to member questions to officers on the report, including on any updates or any issues raised by public speakers. Finally, we move to debate. And then we consider the officer recommendation, and if that is not approved, we then consider any alternative proposals. So I hope that is helpful in terms of this afternoon's meeting and process. So if I turn to apologies for absence, we have apologies from Councillor Moroney, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Orrell, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Waters. Councillor Whitcroft is substituting for Councillor Moroney. Councillor Ben Burton is substituting for Councillor Nelson. Councillor Baxter is substituting for Councillor Wilson. Okay. Right. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Vassey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a declaration of a theoretical interest. I'm a published author and sell books, fiction titles under my own name and a pseudonym. And item 5B relates, I think, to a bookshop and a bookshop company. I've no idea whether they've ever purchased or sold any of my work, but for the sake of completeness, I wanted to declare it. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Mine is not a theoretical, but an actual declaration of interest. For the eagle eyed amongst you, you will notice that the Member of Parliament for York Outer is referenced in support of the application, and that is my employer, so I won't be sitting on this application, and we'll come back in after that's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any. Right, thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move on then to the minutes of the last meeting. Is someone happy to move that they are a correct record? It's moved. Seconded? Seconded. Right, can I see all those in favour? Okay, so they are agreed. Thank you. In terms of public participation, we obviously take speakers with the particular plans items, and we have no registration to address the committee in a general sense. Correct? Yes, thank you. Okay. Right, if we then move to the plans list, because of a request for one of the speakers for an application that will not be available later this evening, I'd like to propose that we actually reverse the order of the planning items so that we take the designer outlet first and then continue with Museum Street second as previously proposed, and the RSPCA item last. If I can have your agreement on that. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Whitcomb. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I've kept the Museum Street second because obviously the public interest and speakers on that item as well. Yeah. Okay. There are no public speakers on the RSPCA item.
Yes, Chair, is Councillor Baxter aware that you were reversing the order because she absented herself? I just wanted to make sure she's absented herself from the right item. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
I'm assured that she has, Chair.
Yeah. Yes, sorry. We probably better text her. That's good. Can we just briefly have a pause because a councillor to participate must be here for the whole item. So it would be best if we try and get her back before we start the item, if you don't mind. Thank you. Did tell her it was reversed. Hiccup. Okay, so we are then on item 5C, the York Designer Outlet, St Nicholas Avenue. And therefore, if I can ask the relevant officer to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, small table today, difficult to know where to put things. So this planning application seeks permission for a 3-year period for an employee's car park at the designer outlet, which will be operational during November and December. The location, so this is a site location plan. To the south of the centre, you can see the ring road around the centre there, and the existing areas of customer and employee car parking, and then that's the shopping centre building itself. Rather more helpful is this overhead photograph. So the site is, as I say, to the south, an area broadly according to what I'm ringing with the laser pointer. Yeah, 64 and the road to Selby, the A19 and Fulford interchange, and the main dual carriageway access from the A19 roundabout. Slightly close up. The access to the site with a proposed new footway and crossing. So we're in this location here. And then the proposal, so an aggregate circulation road, and then the parking is a biopave construction, which is inserts into the grass to reinforce the surface. Or then there may be, I think it says there may be a gravel finish to that. So it's a change of use and minor operational development as well. The application site is in the Greenbelt. The recommendation is refusal. The very special circumstances, we don't consider that the very special circumstances outlined by the applicant are outweigh the Greenbelt harm and the other harms outlined in the report. Members will have noted that this application is subject to a holding direction from National Highways, the reasons for which are set out in 3.11 of the report, and that sets out National Highways concerns about the planning application. That means the ramifications for this particular item is if members were minded to grant permission, we wouldn't be allowed to. What we would do we would have to make representations to the Secretary of State and seek their approval of an approval for the scheme. There is an update in front of members. Mark, can you find that?
Thank you. In terms of the update to members, there is the first point is a point of clarification in respect of the published report at paragraph 5.24. In broadly speaking, the clarification clarifies the process under which the application could be determined in light of the National Highways holding direction and the need to, in the event of members being minded to approve development, we would be subject to referring the matter to the Secretary of State first. And then since the publication of the report, we have received an additional representation from the agent of the application, the points of which are summarised in the additional information. So happy to leave a few minutes for members to review them.
Right. Can I ask if members have any questions on the plans? No, I'm not seeing any. Right, in which case we need to move to the registered public speakers. And the first registered speaker is Miss Janet O'Neill, who is agent for the applicant in support of the application online.
Chair, before we start, I haven't seen any update. Nobody sent me an update. What's in the update?
Updates are tabled, they're not circulated, they're not printed, they're part of the agenda.
Yeah, I know they're not. But the members have got something I haven't got.
The officers have summarised it. Do you have any specific questions on that? I'll take this before we deal with your 3 minutes.
Well, if they have summarised what my complaint is on the officer's report, then that's fine, if that's what it is.
Yes, they have.
Okay.
I can confirm that. So if you would like to exercise your 3 minutes, do you wish to have a reminder at half a minute before?
No, it's all right, thanks. I've got my phone here. So.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah. Okay, good evening, everybody from Suffolk. The exercise that we've got here is development management, weighing in the balance what's good for the city and what would not be good for the city. What is good for the city is employment. There's 1,600 jobs on this site, mostly local people, spending their funds in the city and business rates of almost £4 million a year. It's a long time activity, going for 30 years, more than 100 shops and food outlets. It was approved with 2,700 parking spaces. The owners were approached by the council to host the Fulford Park and Ride, which allows up to 1,000 spaces to the park and ride. This the owners agreed to do, but this is now the most popular park and ride in the city. But the park and ride is also very good for the city. These two activities coexist for most of the year, but in the run up to Christmas, they're both very busy and they get congestion on the site. The park and ride buses get held up, they can't get into the site or leave. There's long queues overflowing onto the roads and staff get problems getting into work. And what we've done is make a suggestion on how that could be solved to suit both parties. Other options are charging for parking, a time limit for parking. Our frustration is we're told that York's open to business, but there's no reference to the council's economic strategy in the report. There's no comments from the economic development team. There has been no useful dialogue with this shared problem. The officer's report is one-sided, as if the council has nothing to do with this site, which isn't the case. It says that the local planning authority attributes moderate weight to the economic benefits on the basis of no information and no discussion in the report. The clients had hoped for realistic discussions on their proposal and genuine options. The council's economic strategy says that they'll create conditions for flexible businesses to thrive and survive, including improving out-of-town employment land and transport links. And also they'll work with the planning system to protect existing employment sites. The justification for permission is very special circumstances on the basis of the outlet hosting the park and ride, who sell 1,000 tickets a day in the run up to Christmas. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, if we then can turn to Mr. Paul Tyler, who is speaking. Oh, sorry, apologies, I do apologise. Questions to the speaker. Sorry. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jenna. Just in relation to the park and rides that's hosted at the designer outlet, is there anything more you can say in terms of the potential risk to the future operation of the park and ride sites in the event that the application is refused?
Well, that's clearly an option that the site owners have at their disposal. And the site has planning permission for 2,700 spaces just for its own activity. And this is why we're surprised that people haven't talked to us about this and what sort of compromise we can arrange between us. But the park and ride is just a tenant with a lease. But that isn't anything that the owners want to do. They want to be public spirited and host the park and ride.
Councillor Cole.
Chair. Thank you. Can I just ask to what extent the proposal would actually address the challenge that you described? It seems to be relatively modest in scale, whereas the challenge of parking on the site during the Christmas period is enormous.
Well, there could be a number of solutions. There could also be time restricted parking. As we've said previously, a commuter or a visitor who comes to the park and ride site takes up a site for the whole day. But a shopper, you could have 4 or 5 shoppers using the same space. So the park and ride does disadvantage the outlet, clearly. But this is, something that could be just talked through to see what solutions. It may be one solution, it may be several solutions. But this is the only privately owned park and ride in the city. The other 5 are under the control of the council. But we went to First Bus and said, will you corroborate what we've said about the congestion? And they've said, absolutely. That the really busy times can't get on site. So at least if the staff at the outlet were able to get on site and get to their work instead of being held up, whether they're arriving on the park and ride or in their own cars, they get caught up in the congestion.
Councillor Vassie.
Thank you. Yes, you've spoken about congestion being severe at Christmas. Can you explain how increasing the number of parking spaces and having 350 more car parking spaces will reduce congestion or alleviate it? Yeah, well, what we say, and we've been using WSP as our highway consultants, is that our intention isn't to generate any more traffic or any more shoppers. What we are doing is providing an efficient way for people to get to work, and that some of the spaces vacated by the staff would then alleviate the problems of the congestion. But as I said, this might be just one solution. There may be more. There may be other things that the outlet can do that don't require planning permission. That's what I'm saying. But obviously, you couldn't do anything on your own without discussing it with the council.
Okay, Councillor Burton.
Yeah, thank you. I think the things that have been put back by highways on this one are in relation to the fact that there are perhaps additional information that could have been provided around a full travel plan to detail how this would work, but there's also things that the development could already do to reduce the amount of disruption to buses, like fines and stewards to let people passing. Of these options,
as well as what? Sorry, can you just say that last bit again? As well as
talks about the use of things like parking stewards, parking fines to prevent the indiscriminate parking which blocks buses, which is probably the most likely issue for what's preventing buses getting through. It seems to be that issue. Has that been explored? Because obviously the additional parking is unlikely to fix that exact issue unless you provide so much that you have enough parking to cover the problem altogether. But that sounds unlikely with 350 spaces, I guess, is the risk.
Yes. Well, as we say, it may not just be one solution. The outlet does provide parking wardens during the busiest times so that the parking is as best they can controlled. But the centre manager is the next person to speak, so he would be advising you from first-hand experience of that.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Janet. There's obviously quite a lot of representations that have come through here, and you've mentioned the possibility to discuss with the council and come to some sort of compromise. But the local councillor has objected, as has Fulford Parish Council. Just want to know what kind of engagement, community engagement, the applicant has done with these local stakeholders to try and win community buy-in.
Well, we've had a meeting, and again, you'd probably be better asking Paul about this, because I haven't been there with all the meetings. But he's met Councillor Revilius and, as far as I know, both MPs. He's invited the mayor. I don't know whether or not the mayor has actually turned out. But what we felt is that the standard solution of a transport assessment and a travel plan is usually the answer, working towards a problem of congestion. But these the people who come to the site, it's a regional facility, and they come from West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, Teesside. They come from all over the place. And if people decide to drive to the site, there's little that can be done. You know, for a family of 5 to come on the train would be serious money, or they might not have a sustainable travel option. So we didn't feel the responses that we had grasped adequately. It's not like when we've worked for the university and there's one organisation and we helped with developing the travel plan and the university signed up to it. You know, that was the end of the system. All the things in the travel plan were then activated. But when you get a situation like this, where there's 100 different employers on site and where people come from a wider area, we're happy to have a dialogue on it, but it's difficult to know how you would stop a family of 5 driving from Bradford, for example. It's not a standard employer. You know, it's not one where you can control what the employees and the visitors. I mean, the employees are a small part, actually. It's the visitors and the park and ride passengers who are the lion's share of the people who drive their new park.
Okay. There's no more questions to Ms. O'Neill. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
It's appreciated. Right. We could now turn to Mr. Paul Tyler. I do apologise about earlier. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Would you like us to indicate 30 seconds before that?
Time.
Right. Yep. No, fine. Thank you.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Paul Tyler and I am the centre manager at the Designer Outlet. I've been the centre manager there for 5 years. What I wanted to do is just take a few minutes to just recap on why the application has gone in the first place. And then secondly, I'm here if there are any direct questions about the operation of the shopping centre. So for those of you who are not familiar with the centre, and apologies, this may repeat a few of Janet's comments, but just to reiterate, we've been trading almost 30 years. We have over 100 shops. We have 15 restaurants and coffee shops. We employ 1,600 people, ranging from retailers, chefs, waitresses, maintenance, landscapers, facilities, management, part-time, full-time. So we employ roughly 1 in 7 of the retail jobs in York. We attract 4 million visitors a year. Majority of that is from within 90-minute catchment, and about 15 to 20% is from what we call domestic tourism, so beyond that 90-minute radius. Janet's already mentioned we contribute nearly £4 million a year in business rates, and as a major employer, one of the biggest employment destinations, we contribute significantly to the York economy. We host the Fulford Park and Ride. That's obviously already been discussed. So just to reiterate, that is one of the city's busiest park and rides. We have allowed use of that park and ride facility on our land for many years now, free of charge. Well, actually at our cost. It costs us to host that. We have 2,700 spaces and up to 1,000. Currently, the arrangement in the lease with the council can be used for park and ride, a third, essentially. With regards to the application, look, we've got a genuine and real-time problem here. The problem isn't just the designer outlets. This is the problem for the council and the park and ride, as well as the designer outlet. Essentially, we've got two very successful models. The park and ride over the years has increased in popularity. Certainly, it was at its busiest last year with all the additional promotions that councillors and members were promoting, which we're supportive of. But essentially, it's also at the busiest time of year for retail. So the two work harmoniously for a lot of the year. 2 months of the year, they conflict. Essentially, we have shoppers and park and ride users fighting for the same spaces. Essentially, the traffic congestion becomes unmanageable. For those who haven't looked at the images, I've printed off some large images there in the room. I'm happy to share with them because it is a real live problem that I live and breathe. The traffic congestion basically means the park and ride buses can't get into the centre or out of the centre. Park and ride users are queuing, usually 100 to 200 deep. Photographs I'm happy to go through. My staff can't get into the centre to, fulfil their jobs in time. They're late leaving. The local visitors.
You've
still, yeah,
over 3 minutes. If you could bring to that to conclude.
Yeah, so it's just look, the application is to try and alleviate this. It's a common sense approach. We are trying to put 340 spaces available for staff. You asked Janet the question, why 340? It could be more. So, yeah.
Thank you. Right, questions to Mr. Tyler. Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler, for coming to speak to us today. I do understand your concern around the congestion impact, but there is the concern, I think it's been raised around the report of induced demand. There's more car parking space. If there's more of that, you're just going to get more cars in. And we heard from the previous representation that if it's being there for use of the designer outlet, that's 4 or 5 potentially cars using that parking space per day. Have we considered that as the risk to potentially causing more congestion if we are inducing that kind of demand and not necessarily paying heed to the modal shift outlined in National Highways recommendation?
Yeah, so I fully understand the question. The purpose of the application is to deal with the existing problem. We have roughly 200, in excess of 200 cars parked in precarious places around the site. Our view was to try and make that a safer environment and make sure everything can flow a lot easier. We spent £30,000 in additional security officers, car park stewards last year to manage it as best we can. The idea with this, and the reason we put 350 in, because we determined that's probably about 350 staff cars on site at the busiest opportunity. So we felt that was a reasonable position to, if we rehome the 350 staff, that does release the spaces for park and ride and the shoppers where the demand was. And that's what we've based the assessment on.
Councillor Stenton.
Thank you. As you said, this is around creating parking explicitly for staff. What other approaches have you trialled during those busy couple of months in terms of supporting staff to use alternatives to the car to get to work wherever that's possible for them, in terms of whether it's shuttle buses from the station or other other means that would mean that the staff member wouldn't need to use the car in order to help alleviate some of the obvious problems that exist on site?
Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify, again, the reason it's that we're suggesting this overflow is for staff is purely because it would be a temporary car park, not really fit and not purposely built for for a broader general public. And what we would have loved to do is say, actually, that's where the park and ride will relocate to, which is in Albus. However, that wouldn't be, it wouldn't be operationally effective to try and move a park and ride for 2 months of the year. So that's why it was staff. In terms of what we do actually have a travel plan. We have a travel coordinator. We communicate sustainable travel to all of our staff through notice boards, through our digital websites. We have 33% of our staff already now travel to the centre using sustainable travel, and that's ranging from cycles, walking, car share and buses, as well as the park and ride. We've got 45% of our employees who we've surveyed who there is no viable alternative for, including me. I live in Ripon. We have people commuting in from quite broad distances where there isn't a viable alternative. There's then about 15 to 20% who we are continually working with in terms of where we can to encourage car share. But there's over 100 different start and finish times in terms of shifts that I can't directly control. That makes it very, very challenging. So there's 20% of our staff who, as a second mode of travel, it might not be their regular, that do car share where they can, but it's not necessarily their first and their first option. So we've got 200 bicycle racks. I mean, we are doing as much as we can to do that, but the staff, just to be clear, is a small part of the problem here. It's broader than that. It's park and ride users. The council quite rightly are promoting the park and ride. I drive past 3 of their billboards on my way to work every day. It's great. It's the right thing to do. But for 2 months of the year, actually, it means my businesses get less customers because actually more spaces are taken up by park and ride. So that's the challenge we've got is that it works for 10 months of the year generally, but for 2 months when the city is at its busiest because of St Nick's Fair, they need people to use the park and ride. That fills up. When my shoppers arrive, I need to get them parked. So the solution we've put, and this is an interim solution while we work with the council, and we want to work with the council on a bigger scale solution to this, because it can't continue the way it is. We need a solution for the park and ride and the designer outlet, and it needs to work hand in hand.
Okay, Councillor Vassie.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, there's reference made to various uses that have been encroaching on the number of car parking spaces. Ice rink, fun fair, summer beach, golf course, car wash. My understanding is that all of those have eaten car parking spaces. Could you give us an idea of how many car parking spaces?
Okay, so we 2-3 years ago we put in an application for a car wash, a service, and again that employs roughly 12 people as well. That doesn't technically eat into parking spaces because it is used by cars, and cars are parked in those spaces when they're being cleaned. So I think we lost technically 4 for the cleaning area, but so it's very minimal. What we did do at that time, just ahead of that going in, we changed our dual lanes around the site, made them one way to help with the flow, and in turn we therefore put in an extra 100 spaces. So we overcompensated by putting extra in at that point. The Winter Wonderland, which is obviously referenced in the report, is probably the biggest event that we do at quite the same time period that we're talking. Essentially, that is an old coach park, so we changed the way we operate coaches. We do not allow coaches to wait on site anymore. We allow them to drop off and they drive off. So from a coach perspective, we address that. Technically, you could argue it's that area is about 60 spaces for normal vehicles, which again wouldn't address the issue that we've got. And obviously, just to reiterate, that facilitates the annual Winter Wonderland that the city hosted, and then we've now hosted when the city couldn't accommodate it. We felt it was the right thing to do. We still do, to host it on behalf of the city. We've done that for 13 years. I get no income from that. That is something we host for our shoppers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, if I could just follow up with one. I mean, in terms of what you said about your travel plan, what you're doing to encourage staff and so on, I'm struggling to reconcile that with the National Highways comments where they're seeking outstanding information, including some of those areas that you've talked about. So has this information not been conveyed by yourselves to National Highways and to our own Highways Department?
I think my understanding is if a comprehensive and more detailed travel plan needs doing, that needs to be done in conjunction with the council, because actually the problem, if I'm being quite frank, is we host the park and ride. So I've done my travel plan, which relates to my staff, and what we're doing to encourage, and bearing in mind that's less than 10% of the parking spaces on a typical week. We need further dialogue with the council then if there's a further travel plan that needs doing, but the council have taken 1,000 spaces in the current contract, so I'm not sure how we can provide that without working with the council, which we've tried to have an open dialogue with for 4 years.
Thank you. There's no other questions. Thank you very much for your contribution and the answering our questions. It's now the opportunity for members to ask questions to officers on the report, on the update, and on the issues raised by the speakers and the question and answer session with them. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you. Just picking up on a point raised by the previous speaker in terms of input from the council's transport team, not in terms of highways, but in terms of active travel. In the course of the planning process, have officers sought and received comments from that team that's responsible for the sort of park and ride contracts and the sort of modal shift activities?
So in terms of our consultations with highways, for the purposes of planning applications, we consult the highways DC team, the development control team within highways, and if you like, the working practice amongst that is that they collate responses from their sort of wider colleagues. So in straight answer to your question, I don't know, but the highways comments we've received from the DC officers encompass all those factors.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. This is in relation to the information we received on the update and the additional representation from the agent. But they outlined the need to consult potentially the economic development area. Obviously, this will have a significant impact on the city's economy one way or the other. And if section 5.49 doesn't go into as much detail perhaps as it could, I was just wondering whether there was anything around the economy that might contribute towards the very special circumstances that would be required for this application.
I think in terms of clearly appreciate there is an employment aspect, and sort of, if you like, a wider economic activity. We have to, in terms of assessing the application as a whole, we feel that we've taken that into the mix as a whole and attributed to it the relevant weight when considered against other aspects and material planning considerations.
Follow up.
May I? Yes, just so was the economic development team or area contacted specifically about this, or was it just taken into the wider balance by the planning department?
They were not consulted directly because they were not usually historically they've never acted as a if you like a technical consultee on planning applications. However, they were aware of it, and during the application process, there had been sort of, you know, if you like, informal discussions, and in the event of us having received substantive additional information to address, if you like, the other aspects of the application, and we would have then brought that to their attention. However, more generally, I think as planning officers, you know, we're comfortable in taking the view that economic development would support the proposals because it, you know, it due to the nature of those proposals.
There's no other questions to officers, then we can move into debate. Councillor Fenton.
I'll start. It all feels a very unsatisfactory state of affairs. The operation of the park and ride site at the designer outlet is a key component in York's active travel landscape, and it's something that we are encouraging and putting a lot of store by. I would expect, and I'm not assigning blame to anybody, I would expect input from that team to feature quite heavily in this report. Similarly, from economic development, we can all assume what they may say and what their views may be. But I think as members, it's really important for us to understand the perspectives of those teams and to be able to weigh that in the balance. This is obviously a greenbelt site. There's no getting away from that. And in terms of thinking about very special circumstances, having a functioning park and ride facility at that location could be argued to be very special circumstances. Now, the question is then, would the existence of this overspill temporary car park for this number of staff cars, would that in itself ensure the smooth running of the park and ride facility for those busy months of the year? None of us know the answer to that. We don't know that it wouldn't, but we can't be sure that it would. So then, you know, in terms of greenbelt purposes, in terms of openness and permanence, I personally don't think it would have it wouldn't be permanent. So I think the permanence argument wouldn't stand. In terms of openness, it would have some impact on the openness of the greenbelt, but not hugely detrimental given its location adjacent to a developed site. So I'm genuinely torn in terms of the benefits of this and the uncertainty as to what improvements, if you can call it that, what improvements this development would bring. But I'm loath to dismiss it out of hand because of the benefits that I think it could bring. But I think if I were to go against the officer refusal, I think and recognising that it's not within our gift to approve it anyway because of the standing statement from National Highways, I think there would absolutely have to be a commitment within any 3-year period for which permission is granted for there to be a plan, maybe linked to the retendering of the park and ride contract, to try and resolve these issues, which seem to have lain unresolved for far too long, that have come to a head in the context of this planning application, which, you know, it shouldn't be in the context of this application that we're having a serious discussion about a key component of the city's transport infrastructure. So it's unsatisfactory on a number of fronts. But I'm genuinely open-minded as to whether I think this application can be supported.
Councillor Burton.
Yeah, thank you. Share a lot of the comments that you've just made. I think clearly there needs to be, it's always difficult because we aren't hearing from the officers who primarily the people who are the other side of the conversation, I guess. We've got planning here, but we haven't got highways or the bus service. So we're only hearing one side of a story, which makes it always a little bit difficult to unpick exactly what's going on. But clearly it's not a good situation and it can't carry on the way that it is. And there needs to be proper dialogue about how this is resolved. And that needs to include the park and ride team, who are a major contributor. And it's pretty concerning that one of our park and rides is essentially operated primarily by a retail provider who isn't obligated, doesn't have the same interest exactly in terms of the way it works. But I think for myself, I don't think there's enough here either for me to say on that basis I should support a car park when there's little evidence about how it's going to operate and will it actually fix the situation, and like you say, how it's going to be phased out in 3 years' time. So I think for myself, I'm not feeling minded to support the application still, but I think it comes with, we need to make it pretty clear as a committee, if we do choose to agree with the recommendation to refuse, that there needs to be further dialogue quite significantly and quite quickly as to how we resolve the problem, and that engages the park and ride team for me.
Okay, Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. I won't repeat all the points because I agree with Councillor Fenton and Councillor Burton largely with what they've said. I think, yeah, the limits on the report, particularly around the economy, but also around the transport teams responsible, completely agree with that point. And Bill, I've made my point about the economy in my questions as well. We need the economic department to have more of an active role in these sorts of planning applications. It's got to be the work of many hands there. I will also just make the point, as I made, I think in Planning a few weeks ago, about supplements and updates. I think it was reasonable of the public speaker or the agent support the applicant to say she had to speak then without seeing the supplements. At least it wasn't 16 pages this time like it was a few weeks ago. But I think that we ought to hammer that point home, make it clear. I think given what was outlined in the report from National Highways, we're in a bit of a straitjacket here anyway when it comes to approval is not an option for this committee at the moment, and we'd have to escalate it to the Secretary of State, and we know how difficult that would be. It's very important that it's on Greenbelt land. I don't think that was necessarily mentioned as much. It was taken as a matter of course, but Greenbelt land is important. But I do take the point that it's right next to the designer outlet, and the economy is also very important. I think I would appreciate, it's a shame because we're saying we want to have more discussion. We want to make sure that the necessary teams of the transport work with the designer outlet, work with the parks and ride, work across the council. And yet the starting point for this conversation will essentially be a bit of a down note because it will be the rejection of an application if that's what it comes to here. But we need to have a more productive discussion on this because it's clear there's a problem with the park and ride. We know that that's the case across the city. We need to perhaps have that sort of engagement a little bit better than we thought. Yeah, I think I agree with the sentiment. There's probably not quite enough to support this as an application. There are some very legitimate points raised in the report, particularly around national highways, who I think hold the biggest sway when it comes to matters like this. But having the support or discussions with the economics team, having discussions with the transport team, that's got to be a priority if further applications come forward, which I hope they do. And hopefully we can have a more positive engagement discussion and hopefully be seeing some of these issues solved for the designer outlet and for the park and ride. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, if there's Councillor Culloch and then Councillor Bassey.
Nothing's been said that I disagree with, and it's of course we have to bear in mind that whatever decision this committee comes to, the position of National Highways means that we cannot simply in this meeting give that consent. What concerns me is that this is, in the context of the challenges, a relatively modest solution, which I can't imagine making a terribly significant contribution. We've got on the one hand, the success that we welcome of the designer outlet and all that that brings to the city, the employment and so forth, attracting many to the city over the Christmas period, and the growing success of Park and Ride, and all of this competing with the other attractions, the Winter Wonderland, and unsurprising that there is a need to find some resolution of this. But I'm not convinced that this is the answer. And even the contribution it makes will be a very small one and a very temporary one, given the position of national highways and the concerns that we have to bear in mind that this is within the Greenbelt. I find it hard to approve this application, but I say that very, very much aware of the pressures on this site and the need to come up with some realistic, practical solutions that will enable the continued growth and success, both of the designer outlet and of the Park and Ride, and the success this brings to the city. I'm not sure that we've got sufficient of an answer in this application to resolve all that.
Councillor Bassey.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with the comments that have been made. It seems to me, I have a lot of sympathy with what the applicant has been putting out, but it seems to me that this is a cry for help presenting itself as a planning application. And that frustrates me. I feel that the council's focus on Park and Ride has maybe drifted. Our focus has not been properly there. I take on board everything that was said about highways, and I personally am not convinced that providing more car parking spaces actually will do anything other than provide more cars. I can't see that solving a problem with congestion. I note the fact that the designer outlet has hosted the Winter Wonderland, and that was a generous thing that they've done. One could argue that that's a reflection of the council's inability to host the event in the city centre, and may have contributed to the congestion we're talking about. I know that's not officially germane to this application, but we are seeing that a number of parking spaces have disappeared over time for a variety of different reasons. Like the other members, I would like to hope that the City Council will engage much more constructively with the designer outlet in the months ahead to find solutions that benefit the city and the designer outlet and the economy, without taking us down to this path that I suspect simply leads to more congestion. As a councillor in a rural ward to the south of York, I'm also very much aware of the fact that these roads, the A19 coming towards the designer outlet, carries more traffic than the A64 between York and Leeds. I don't think we need to be encouraging that. And I do think the green belt is important. And from the aerial pictures you can see, it transforms the area. And personally, I have a great deal of difficulty in believing that the words temporary and car park actually stand together realistically. I can see such a thing happening, and then before you know it, it's just part of the parking. So I'm minded to accept the officer's recommendation, Chair. And as I say, agree with all the other voices that the council really does need to be talking more with the designer. But
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think from my point of view, again, I share the general consensus that this is not where we would like to be. The designer outlet is an important part of the York economy, but we have some very clear views in terms of national highways, which at the end of the day, the applicant needs to meet if they're going to get the blockage removed. And more importantly, they were also the views of our own highway development team. And, you know, for us to approve something that may not actually sort the problem that it's claimed to do has not been properly evidenced, I do not see that we can possibly approve the application in its current form. And that, you know, we all know in terms of the planning process, you have to judge what is in front of you, not what you would like to see. So I will, if there's no other contributions, I will move formally the officer recommendation. Can I see if that is seconded? Councillor Collick and Councillor Burton offered seconding. If we can then proceed to a vote, can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation? Can I see all those against? And can I see any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The officer recommendation to refuse is approved. Okay, we'll just have a brief 5-minute adjournment, if that's all right. Well, I say 5 minutes, so let's say 10 past, please. Right, we'll resume the meeting. We are joined by Councillor Baxter, who declared an interest on the earlier item, and we've also been joined by Councillor Fisher, who is substituting now for Councillor Orrell. Okay. Yes.
If you would allow, given that Councillor Fisher was not present when, at the beginning of the meeting, we invited any declarations of interest.
Yes.
I think it would be technically appropriate that
it would indeed.
Thank
you.
I have none. I have none.
Thank you. Okay, let's then move on to item 5B, the application for 1 Museum Street listed building consent. Can I ask the officers to introduce the plans, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is a building consent application for alterations to number 1 Museum Street. So this is a Grade 2 listed building, and the property is within the Central Historic Core Conservation Area. The scope of works for the scheme is set out in pages 44 and 45 of the report. Quite a lengthy list over almost those 2 pages. They comprise shop fitting, repair and refurbishment, and then some more significant alterations, including solar PV to one of the rear roof slopes. There's alterations to windows and the introduction of secondary glazing, or replacement of secondary glazing. There's a new staircase and lift proposed, a new mezzanine level, and fire lobbies proposed as part of that scheme. Go through the presentation, which is quite lengthy. There's an awful lot of information being presented to us. So the site plan: Museum Street, Blake Street, Duncan Place. The largest concentration of listed buildings in the Central Historic Core Conservation Area, and a lot of those to do with the within and off this map, to do with those civic functions of the city. There's a site, building in question. We've got a series of existing and ground floor plans. So this is the existing ground floor plan, and this shows, I believe, the situation when the tourist information and the office users above vacated the property. And members on the site visit will have seen that strip out works have commenced in accordance with a listed building consent that was previously granted for the site, to take out a lot of those previous shop fitting and partition works. And this shows post vacation, but prior to stripping out works, some of the internals of the building. These are the ground floor areas. This is the entrance to Blake Street, and that shows the existing platform lift, which gives level access into the adjacent assembly rooms building. This is the proposed ground floor plan. That might be clear. Of note is the new platform lift and a replacement platform lift. That's correct, to maintain that that's access into the assembly rooms. Existing first floor plan, primarily offices, previously office users. And some photographs showing that broad layout of the building, details of the building. proposed first floor plan. You're going to note the platform lift going through the building. Members will have noted the reference to the fire lobbies. It's on here. It's not ground floor. Yes, sorry, I missed the fire lobby from the ground floor. So that's a new intervention. And then first floor. This is a new stair that's provided to give access to the second floor and the proposed mezzanines. Existing second floor really only exists in this this later addition, I believe, to the rear. Otherwise, the first floor rooms have very high ceilings, as members will have seen on that site visit, and hopefully been able to appreciate from the photographs. Photographs of the second floor rooms. And the proposal here is detailed in the reports. This new stair, and the platform lift, and at this level, these to give access into these proposed mezzanines, which will be accessed through these new openings in the existing fabric of the building. Have some sections, so existing sections. If you can read that to the key plan at the bottom, so this would be Museum Street along this axis. So we're taking a section through, and this shows shop fitting of bookshelves. It shows the lift and the new stair and lobby. Here it shows the proposed mezzanine. You can see an opening between those two first floor rooms, and then this is the outline of the chimney breast. Further section, but in cross section, but then looking out towards the street. So the windows looking out onto Museum Street there. And that shows the pre-existing partitioning, 1990s era partitioning, which has now been removed as part of a previously granted list of building consent. Proposed sections, looks very busy because these are visual representations of bookshelves. And you can see the mezzanine, the balustrade of the mezzanine from the back, so looking towards the wall that would be the elevation facing onto Museum Street. And the proposed mezzanine in a more detailed section. And one of the openings at high level within that room between those two rooms. Visual artist impression cutaway. So these partitions have now been removed. And the proposal is for the mezzanine and the one opening, two openings, and a further opening beyond this wall. There's a detail. I mentioned the fire lobbies, and they're referred to in their own specific section of the report. So they don't go for the full height of the room, truncated, so you can still read that space above. And they're located in that agreed position to avoid any setting the proportions of the main circulation space into the building. The roof plan. So this shows solar PV. So it's on the roof slope facing away from the street. So this would be the bulk of the assembly rooms building, would sit on this side. Unlikely to be visible from the street. There is an archway from Lendal into the rear of that 1980s era small shopping development. It's unlikely you'd be able to pick out the solar panels viewed through there. There might be some high level views from some of the taller buildings, but nothing that would be considered to be prominent or harmful. The report refers to structural alterations, certainly in respect of strengthening floors. This drawing shows where those alterations would take place. Over those 3 floors. And then window detail numbers were picked from the report. That some alterations to windows, a more appropriate secondary glazing proposed, and then the removal of some of the modern timber glazing bars to return those windows to a more appropriate appearance for the building. There is an update somewhere.
Right, can I ask if members, sorry, we'll deal with the update after we've dealt with member questions on the plans, as I outlined at the beginning. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Fisher. Right, okay, sorry. Took that as a hand. Does anyone have any questions on the plans, please? Councillor Vassie.
Just one, thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if officers can confirm how high the room is in which the mezzanine is proposed.
Not off the top of that head. You might go to measure it.
It looked about 6 meters, but I wasn't entirely clear from the plan, so just wondering if someone can confirm.
I can. Well, there you go. So, sorry, 3.1 to the underside of the mezzanine, and the mezzanine appears to be 120, and then to the top of the cornice 2.4, making a grand total of about 3.6 meters. No, sorry, 5.5 meters.
Not. Okay, thank you.
Maths.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then just remind myself of the order. Right, officers now provide the update on the report.
Sorry, Chair, it was too quick off the mark there. So printed update in front of members, just relating to additional representations, I think most of which have been received since publication of the report. So I received 12 additional representations of support. Generally, those refer to the public benefits of the application in securing the building's optimum viable use, and that would outweigh the harm of the proposed internal alterations, and that the mezzanines have been carefully planned and would lead to a more flexible space for customers and event attendees.
Okay. If we then move to the registered public speakers, the first speaker is Ms. Susan Major, who is speaking in support on behalf of Clements Hall Local History Group. You have 3 minutes. Do you want us to indicate when you've got half a minute left? Right, okay, thank you. If you press the green button, yes.
My name is Susan Major and I'm from Clements Hall Local History Group. We're one of a large number of groups in the York area. We record and support the heritage of our area, our buildings and our community. Our group has had a successful publishing programme over the last 7 years where we've actually featured local trading and industries. We're launching our latest researches in October, which will feature Micklegate, which, as you know, is a lovely street. And that street has had a long history of bookshops. This proposal is a wonderful and appropriate use for an historic building, which has been empty for 4 long years. We already have plenty of restaurants and hotels. A presence by a company with a reputation of toppings will enhance York's centuries-old status as a book-selling city, attracting book buyers from other areas, and it should be one of York's strategic business aims, supporting its local economy. You're aware that the building has had a number of adverse alterations over a long period, including interior changes when it was a visitor centre. The new application has removed ugly modern additions. It will improve the historic interior and meet accessibility and fire regulation requirements. The proposed mezzanines have been carefully planned, responding to concerns by officers, and we understand they would be ultimately removable as per the example in Bath. So they're not a permanent modification. We would suggest that having a superb bookshop in the building, supporting a specialist element of our local economy, will outweigh those concerns and be a public benefit for York. Although it's in a very historic settings, we understand that external changes will be minimal, and planners have actually agreed that the changes that are proposed to the windows would actually enhance it because they go back to the original style, while still retaining effective measures to mitigate climate change. We're aware that changes have been examined and supported by all sorts of relevant bodies, the Conservation Trust, the Civic Trust, and the York Conservation Areas Advisory Panel. So we look forward to this building being open to the public to view its historic interior. Our group has been talking to Toppings for some time, discussing how we can work together to support local history groups around York. And those history groups are an important part of our local community. We'd all be very disappointed if this is refused. So in summary, do we want a good use of an historic building which retains external features with internal modifications which can be removed later? None will affect the structural integrity of the building. Our view is that the changes will support the preservation of this listed building in the long term. They will enhance the setting of nearby buildings and contribute to York's economy. So it's a win-win.
Thank you very much. Excellent timing there. Are there any questions to Ms. Major? No. Okay. Can I thank you very much. Can I ask the next registered speaker, who is Councillor Melly, ward councillor for the area, who is speaking in support. You have the usual 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I called this item into committee for you to consider today because there is public interest in this building being protected and preserved, and I believe that the best way to do that is to approve this application. The applicant has a proven track record of sensitively transforming historic buildings into beautiful bookshops, and this application is no different. Their bookshop in Bath shares a lot of similarities to this proposal. It is also in a Grade 2 listed building, is also in a very sensitive location next to Bath Abbey, and it includes the insertion of a mezzanine. I have visited the Bath branch and seen for myself how incredibly well done it is. I've also seen photos of other topping bookshops around the country, and every one is beautifully and sensitively designed and constructed internally. I'm excited that the Toppings want to make a similar investment and transformation in One Museum Street in my ward. This proposal is for a cultural use of a prominent premise in York's high street scene. It's not unusual for this committee to consider the importance of employment land and cultural venues when making planning applications. Although this is usually in the context of the potential loss of such amenities, I hope that the committee will also find a way to place value on their creation. There is one conservation architect who does not support this application in their expert professional opinion, and I think that's quite well explained in the report. But this application does have the support of the Civic Trust, York Conservation Trust, Clements Hall Local History Group, York Conservation Areas Advisory Panel, and this ward councillor. There are a lot of benefits included in this application, including bringing an empty, prominently located high street premise into use, providing a new cultural venue for York, making the building more accessible, and replacing the modern windows with a design more in keeping. This application would not only open up the building and reveal its heritage and architecture, it would also open up previously private views to the public of the Minster and the Red House so that various listed buildings could be more appreciated. Any potential minimal, possibly reversible harm to one small part of the inside of the building caused by the mezzanine is vastly outweighed by all these benefits. Local Plan Policy D5 says that harm to an element which contributes to the significance of a listed building or its setting will be permitted where this is outweighed by the public benefits of the proposal, and I think that is clearly the case in this application. The report says that the mezzanine element of this application would cause harm and that the building may otherwise serve a variety of alternative uses which may not require such alteration, but there is no evidence provided of these other viable uses. This is a large empty premise. It has been empty for a long time, partly because of its size and partly because of the listed internal layout. The mezzanine and lift are part of what will make it viable to bring the building back into use. The mezzanine and lift will not only help to make it viable, I would argue that they also enhance the historic value of the building. The lift provides access to the historic value for people who otherwise would not have it. And I believe that the mezzanine will help to better reveal the original ornate cornices and elaborate plasterwork in the ceiling, which otherwise is just too high up and far away.
Could you be drawing to a
Yeah,
conclusion?
good
please?
point. In summary, the building is vacant, which is not conducive with preserving or enhancing its historic importance, or with allowing it to contribute to York's economy or cultural offer. Refusing the application in order to preserve its historic nature will only preserve it as a dilapidated, empty brick relic. This beautiful historic building should be preserved as a functional, accessible building fit for the 21st century, so please approve this application.
Thank you.
It was 3 minutes and I practiced, maybe I spoke a bit more slowly this evening.
Okay. Are there any questions to Councillor Melly? Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Melly, for that informative discussion there. I think one of the things that you raised, so there is one architect who opposes this, but we've had support from all the other areas outlined, you outlined and outlined in the report. Have any of your residents raised any opposition to this application at all?
No, I haven't been contacted by a single resident in opposition to this application. There's been lots of support, but no opposition. You know, it is a professional expert who you need to listen to their advice about what they feel the harm is. I think it's just a difference of opinion of the weight of that harm. You know, in the planning balance, you're balancing the harm against the benefits, and I think it's just difference of opinion of how much weight to give to different aspects.
Any other questions to Councillor Melly? No, thank you. Thank you very much. Finally, can we come to the third registered speaker, Mr. Robert Topping? Right. If you press the green button, please, and you have 3 minutes. Do you want to have a reminder before?
I think I'll be fine.
Right, thank you.
Chair, councillors, I'm Robert Topping. Louise and I opened our first bookshop in 2002. Our son then was 11 years old. Our daughter was just 8. It was a family business. Their enthusiasm far outweighed any lack of experience they had. And 23 years later now, with a new generation in charge of our business. Hugh, our son, is here today, and his wife Saskia. They're very much looking forward to moving to York to lead what we hope will be our largest and most important bookshop to date. This new bookshop will be the largest independent bookshop to open in this country in living memory, with around 75,000 titles. But without the mezzanine, we would lose space for about 38 bookcases, 258 shelves, and almost 8,000 different books. This is because, unlike other retail displays, bookcases are dependent on wall space rather than square footage. Now, the Conservation Officer assesses the level of harm that will result from our plans as less than substantial, which, according to the National Planning Policy Framework, means any harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including securing an optimum viable use. One of the unique characteristics of bookshop, particularly for our style of book selling, is that the public benefits are directly proportional to the range of available books. The mezzanine is particularly important for us and for our children's, teenage and young adult sections, groups for whom it's vitally important we encourage reading. If it's rejected, our children's section would be halved in size. Since our early days, the biggest player on the high street, of course, has been and still is Watson's. It's owned by an American hedge fund. It's run centrally. This may be a cost-efficient and corporate way of doing things, but we're a family business. We prefer a different approach, a more traditional one, without a head office making all of the decisions. Our booksellers run their own sections and do all their own buying. I recently saw in our Bath bookshop, we have 32 different books on bees, compared to the handful you would find elsewhere. Now, I've got a colleague there, Matthew, our natural history buyer, you could say he's a bee in his bonnet for nature writing. Crucially, this is the thing we cherish, this freedom for our booksellers to stock a vast variety of books which we can offer to our readers. Our architects have designed this mezzanine gallery, as has been mentioned in Bath also, as a lightweight intervention. It minimises impact on the historic fabric. It's fully reversible. Now we're supported by York Civic Trust and York Conservation Trust in our plans. The view of York Conservation Trust is our proposal exemplifies the best architectural design and conservation practice. They wrote there should be no question that the very limited harm in this instance is greatly outweighed by the public benefit this scheme will bring not only to this building, but also the city. Chair, councillors, we hope you will support our proposal to enable us to get on with creating what we hope will be a brilliant new bookshop for the people of York. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Topping. Right, are there any questions to Mr. Topping? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you for your presentation. Could you just give an indication of how many jobs will be created on this site, please?
I think roughly, well, it's hard to say, but I think roughly it will be about 30, including some part-time work, but mainly full-time.
Thank you.
We certainly think, if I may say so, we'll be employing more people than Watson's. In all the 4 cities where we compete against Watson's, we deploy a lot more books and we employ a lot more booksellers because our sort of work is more labour intensive because we stock a bigger stock range. So there's more work, but we like the work.
Can I ask a question regarding the mezzanines? I understand that they add about 10% to the floor space that you will have in the other rooms. Now, you referred to the wall space being the key issue, but 10% for a very substantial intrusion in 2 of the 3 staterooms is obviously quite a significant issue, as our conservation officer has pointed out. So I just wanted to understand, how much difference that actually makes.
Well, it will make a more than 10% difference to us in casing, bookcases and stock holding. We're not like a chain which relies on bestsellers. Watson's have got a little more brand power and buying power and that public position. We rely on selling individual books to people, 1 book at a time. Often we keep books for years. If we've chosen the right book, we believe in it. Not every book lasts, but a lot of books will last for years. And we keep those books on our shelves. So wall space is the key factor for us because every day when we sell books, it's one of this, one of that, one. There are a few books we sell in multiples, but it's all about selling individual books. So it's all about wall space for us.
Can I ask a second question? I know there has been some limited adjustment of the width of the mezzanine floors in terms of trying to improve the visibility of the basic structure and scale of the rooms and the chimney breasts at the end. Was any consideration given to seeing if you could actually accommodate a narrower mezzanine in terms of providing more open views or in the room. So
I would argue that the mezzanine is quite narrow. It's the same size as our successful mezzanine in Bath. The original proposal, the mezzanine was mistakenly put in too wide. We only need enough space for people to look at books on the wall and be able to pass by behind them. And also we'd like to put some coffee tables on the mezzanine. We offer complimentary coffee to readers. We'd like to put some coffee tables there that people can sit in the mezzanine and enjoy the space too.
okay.
But I would argue it is a delicate structure. If you've seen pictures of a Bath bookshop, you'll see it looks very elegant.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions to Mr. Topping? Can we thank you for your contribution on coming a long distance, I think, for today, I assume, and for answering all our questions. Thank you. Okay. We could now turn to questions from members to the officers on the report, on the update, and in terms of any issues arising from the speakers that you wish. Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Cullick.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a feeling we'll be talking about the mezzanine to a great extent here. But my understanding is in the recommendation, it says that the mezzanine structure would erode the evidence of the original layout. But given that it's a non-permanent change to the area, I'm just trying to understand sort of what weight to add to that phrase erode. Does it mean it will be temporarily obscured, or would it be a permanent change to what is a listed building? I'm just trying to understand whether, given that, as far as we can tell, it's not going to be a permanent fixture or could be removed, does that mean that it's going to erode the evidence of the original layout, or would it just temporarily obscure?
I think the first thing is, I don't think until today, perhaps there's been any indication that this is a temporary feature of this building. Listed building consent is being applied for this as a permanent change. The alterations to the building to go with the mezzanine are not just limited to the insertion of the mezzanine itself. Obviously, you have the steel support, and then you have an additional staircase being put in the building, which alters the circulation pattern. Then you have doorways at higher level. Now, theoretically, any of these can be reversed. All sorts of things can be reversed, but it's a theoretical reversal. You know, we don't have a time frame for the reversal. We don't have we don't have any proposal for the reversal of this work. So, you know, we wouldn't see it as a temporary alteration to the building. We'd see this as, you know, a permanent change. And, you know, we're, you know, policy D5 seeks to, you know, preserve the buildings. We're supposed to give great weight to the conservation of the designated heritage asset. And certainly that's the way we viewed this alteration.
Councillor Cullick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question was very, very similar. I guess it's the same question. You know, just to what extent would these changes be reversible?
I think I've really answered that. I don't really I'll give any more to that.
Okay. Are there any other questions to officers? Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, I feel like, sorry. I feel like I'm sort of asking the same question, but would it make a difference how much we should take these into consideration if they are temporary versus permanent? I appreciate you're saying that I suppose a temporary thing could be permanent or a permanent thing could be temporary, if that makes sense. If you're saying you're putting something in permanently and then taking it out, or vice versa, should we weigh them up differently? Does that, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, whether, no matter how temporary an alteration is to a building, all the time that the alteration endures, the harm persists. So we should be weighing the harm as it is in front of us now.
Councillor Whitcroft.
I promise to change the subject. So this may be, so I'll start with just sort of, again, with the last ones we spoke about, the weight should be given to the economic value. We're talking, you know, a significant amount of jobs, 30 jobs. Should we take that into account? And also, is there, I appreciate it's a private company selling books, is there an educational value that we could potentially take into weight when we make our decision as well? Do either of those could either of those be considered as additional planning weight, or is that not the case?
The weight, I think we cover that in terms of public benefits. We cover that in paragraph 517 of the report, page 49. And the planning practice guidance for the historical environment states that public benefits may follow from many developments and could be anything that delivers economic, social, and environmental objectives described in paragraph 8 of the NPPF. And that's the bit of the NPPF which talks about why we do what we do, what planning is all about. So yes, in terms of economic benefits, educational benefits of a bookshop as a public benefit might give it a great deal of weight, but I'm not dismissing it entirely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, then we can move on to debate.
Can I just, I just wanted to remind members, we are dealing with national heritage here, and we also have, in addition to all our policies and the NPPF, which members are fully conversant with, we also do have to consider the requirements of the Planning Act, Planning List of Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990. So that creates a statutory presumption for the local authority to have special regard to the desirability of preserving the listed building or any special historic and architectural features it possesses. And we have to give considerable importance and weight in determining the planning application. And where harm is identified to a heritage asset, there has to be a strong presumption against the grant of permission. And that's the point you move into the consideration of public benefits, whether you feel those public benefits outweigh the identified harm and the considerable weight you have to give to avoiding that harm.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Gareth. Right, we move into debate. Councillor Vassey and then Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair. In view of the proposed use of this building, I think it's appropriate to, because the proposed application is about stories, essentially. When I was reading about this building yesterday, what really intrigued me was that it was built in 1860 to administer the Poor Law Union. It provided grand rooms 6 meters high, where fine gentlemen would sit in warm, coal-fired rooms, deciding how much bread to give to people in the workhouses. That's what this building was actually about. And so, yes, I kind of have sympathies. We want to preserve our heritage, and yes, our heritage is wonderful. But we also live in the 21st century. And for buildings to function, they have to be cost effective. People have to be able to use them. If they can't afford to run a business in them, then they fall into disrepair. And then we berate ourselves and look for reasons why nobody's giving us money to keep this building alive, even though it's crumbling in front of us. I then think about the fact that the Conservation Trust is happy, the Civic Trust is happy, the York Conservation Advisory Panel is happy. I haven't seen a single submission objecting to this. If we go online and look at the application, there's just a whole string of things in support. We've heard the mezzanine could be taken out. We've heard there was a lift, it's come out, a new lift is proposed. To me, what I think residents would expect of me as a member of this committee is how do we make sure we keep our city vibrant. A point was made about cafes and restaurants, and we all know we're drowning in cafes and restaurants. We know that we need more than that to sustain our future, to sustain a city centre. So personally, I'm perfectly happy to say no to the proposal for refusal and to say, yes, I would support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Gareth?
Just in terms of the lift, it's not a replacement lift. I'm sorry if my rambling through the drawings gave that impression. So there is a replacement for the lift in the lobby, which is just takes you up a couple of steps. But the lift, which is shown on the section drawing, it is a new intervention running up the centre of the building there.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification. Councillor Fenton, Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I think the objections seem to focus on the mezzanine. I think looking at the visualization of the mezzanine in the context of the very high ceilinged room, personally, I think it gives a new and kind of interesting perspective on the room in terms of proximity to the ceiling rows and the cornices. So whilst I accept that harm is identified, it's less than substantial harm. In addition to all of the positive benefits that Councillor Vassie mentioned, personally, I do not see the mezzanine as a detractor. I see it as an enhancement.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. And yes, associate myself with the comments of the previous two speakers. I walk past this building every day. Walk past the building every day on my way back from work. And today was the first time I've seen inside it on Gareth's tour there through the presentation. We're talking about preserving our heritage, and that's really, really important. But part of me thinks, what is the point of preserving all our heritage if no one's ever going to see it? You know, having that amazing insight, having the opportunity to go and view one of the most remarkable buildings in a city full of remarkable buildings, I think is an argument in favour of approving this application, which is certainly something I am very much minded to do. Agree we need to keep our city vibrant. When we talk about these issues, occasionally people talk about cafes, restaurants and pubs. I think cafes, restaurants and pubs are fantastic. I think we need to keep them. I won't back them, but I agree we need to add to our city's vibrancy, and having an empty building there is the worry that it would fall into disrepair. It would not be looked after as much as it could have. I think that Toppings have proven themselves as good owners when it comes to previous buildings. In Bath as the main example that was given. It's been empty for 4 years, and it's such a shame to have that in the heart of our city. I think we should add economic weight to it as well as cultural value and cultural weight. I appreciate that's outlined in paragraph 20 or in paragraph 5.17 and 20 of the planning practice. I'm very much minded to move this very much minded to approve this application because I think it's an excellent use of the area. I think we've had that discussion around the permanency of the mezzanine. Appreciate Councillor Fenton's point. It might enhance it. You get a different view of it. Yeah, I think in the weight of things, I'd be very much minded to approve this application.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. It brings me somewhat to mind of the old saying, if a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody there, does it make a noise? Well, there are some beautiful features in this building, but no one can see them because it's out of use. It has been for 4 years. All you see is the G&K things, security things in the window, you know, which is empty. It's an empty building. If it was suitable in its current form, why has no one taken it on and turned it into a building as it is? I totally get the idea that some of the changes do erode the history of the building, but there are too many people in York will tell us that York is like a museum at times. You know, it's difficult to move forward because of the history. Overall, I take the same view as the other members who've spoken. I think the economic value, 30 jobs, the presence of a really, really valuable bookshop, and I love books, I have thousands of the things, you know, I think it will be an enormous asset to this city. And yes, I think there may be some less than substantial harm, but I think it's outweighed by the actual economic benefits. And so I certainly will be opposing the officer's recommendation, and I will be happy to support approval.
Okay. Councillor Baxter and Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate everyone's points, and I think the fact that there'll be solar panels as well on top is really good, and we've seen an increase of that in the city in these historic buildings. And I think, you know, it looks a lot more accessible than it previously had, and we all know that we do not have enough accessible buildings in the city, modern or built in the 1800s. And I think just to reiterate Councillor Whitcroft's points that there's no point in preserving these buildings for so long that no one ever sees them. I think it's a shame that we'd let a building carry on being empty when we can enhance people's experience of York. Yeah, I do not support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Cullick.
Thank you, Chair. I think the direction of travel is becoming clear here. I just think it's worth noting, I asked myself the question, are there other examples in the city where doors have been created in a very historic context? And I didn't find it took very long to answer that question, because one can easily think of, for example, the Guildhall, or St Michael's Spurriergate, where a door was created at height to access a new mezzanine level. And I would say in both cases that change was very much for the better and created opportunities to use buildings in new ways. Very historic and very important buildings in the city. But I'm also aware that if this committee is minded to approve rather than accept the officer's recommendation, that I would very much like to see the story of the building retained in some way. And I wonder whether we can condition in a satisfactory way that somehow that story is told and retained. I remember when we had conversations around an application for the old Bootham Hospital site, and I can think of others too, where there was quite a lot of discussion around how that story would be told rather than lost. And I think that that's something that hasn't really been explored sufficiently, in my view. I wonder whether it's something that we could explore in terms of conditioning. And just as I observe the reaction of the Topping family there, I think it's something that they would be very warmly disposed to consider.
Okay. Can I ask for planning officers' advice on the suggestion about an additional condition?
Well, we don't have any conditions at the moment.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that.
A condition, I have to think what's in members' minds, because we have, you know, we've in certain circumstances we recently granted permission for a conversion of what was the original synagogue on Old Walk, subject to a plaque memorializing what was the original pre-existing use of the building. I don't think a plaque is probably the right approach here, but I'd really look to members what members' thoughts were, and I had to do that rather than trying to suggest it myself. Yeah.
We'll perhaps come back to that when give you a little bit of time to reflect. I think everyone else has spoken in terms of the main debate, bar myself. Unless you want to come in a second time. No, okay. I think I share a lot of the views that have been said around the table, but I think it's also right to absolutely acknowledge our conservation officers' views in terms of the substantial nature of the impacts and of the degree of harm. So this is a question of balance. against the others, and of course the advice that we have to give special weight to those conservation aspects. But I've quite coincidentally was in the Toppings building in Bath the other year. That is a magnificent building, and it is an absolute joy to go in it and see the insides. And I did not, in that particular circumstance, feel that the use of it as a bookshop in any way compromised, the grandeur of the place. I think I'd take a slightly different view that, for those of you who've actually been in the building, the upstairs rooms are the three upstairs rooms, the corner one, the two that will have the mezzanine in, are the particularly substantial rooms in that building. And I think, the mezzanines are going to be big intrusions in two of them, but we will still have the biggest and main room. I also understand the points about the circulation, and that's part of the history of the building, as we had explained earlier. So if we are able to get some opportunity to give that interpretation, because I think a lot of people go in the building and not actually appreciate, in effect, it was a two-class system in the way that building operated. So I think that there is a story to tell there, and one that we should be making available. But I think, in terms of the reality, this is an application that will actually open up the vast majority of this building for public access. Other uses might not do that in anywhere near the same way. And it has been vacant, vacant for 4 years. So I do share the view that if you take the balanced judgment, I think the preservation of this building, the provision of the disabled access, which is absolutely desirable change in any circumstances, the economic benefits to the city, I think are very substantial in my personal view. Also outweigh the particular weight that we should put on the harm to the building in conservation terms. So if there's no other indications of people wanting to come back in the debate, can we move to the recommendations? In terms of our process, I would formally move the officer recommendation for refusal. Is that seconded? That is seconded. Okay. Can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation to refuse? Okay, no votes. Can I see all those against the officer recommendation? So that is unanimously agreed not to support the recommendation for refusal. So we will now need to move to an alternative proposition. Gareth, do you want to give us any advice on that first, or should we take a proposition first?
Chair, I suggest that members would vote to delegate the approval of the scheme to officers. We need to devise a set of conditions. Those conditions are largely on a technical basis, technical nature. The one condition that members suggested, Councillor Culloch suggested, I would suggest a suitably worded condition that kicks it down the road and puts the onus on the applicant. So something on the lines of a proposal for a scheme to recognise and understand the history of the building should be submitted for approval, and then developed in accordance with that approval. Would be, I think, the way to probably cover the issue about understanding the history of the building. Otherwise, the conditions will be largely technical. I'm not in a position to reel off a list here, but we could bring that back to Chair and Vice Chair for final approval.
Yes. Councillor Culloch.
That's very helpful. Just to clarify a little more what I was saying earlier, I'm thinking really in two contexts. Firstly, the recording for the benefit of the city's history and its archives of what is before alterations are made. And secondly, the telling of the story within the new business and new use, so that those who come into the building would see something of the history of the building and not just how it is in 2025, 26.
Yeah, I've recorded that.
Yeah. Okay, we have a suggested way forward that we delegate the item for officers to approve in consultation with the chair and the vice chair. Is that moved? Okay, is that seconded?
Moved, Chair.
If there's any debate first, or can we move to a vote? We'll move to a vote. Can I see all those in favour of the recommendation to delegate to officers to approve in consultation with the chair and vice chair? Those in favour? That is also unanimous. Okay, so that concludes the item. We'll just have a 4-minute break, like 10 past again. Thank you, Stephen. Right, you ready to?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, let's now turn then to the final planning item, item 4A, 5A, sorry, in terms of the RSPCA premise. Can I ask officers to introduce the plans, please?
Chair, for all potential users in this particular meeting, haven't we? So now we're at cats, dogs, small animals and birds. So this is an application proposing the redevelopment within the existing use of the RSPCA complex, provide 6 animal shelter buildings, 2 aviaries and associated alterations following the demolition of some of the existing shelters. So at the moment it stands, here's my pointer. There we go. So this is the main reception building. These are kennel buildings. I've got cattery, the puppy unit, a small animal unit, and then another cattery building. Oh, a little bit easier using that one, but never mind. This overlay. So the proposed buildings are those buildings outlined in red. You can see they're the buildings to either be demolished or be retained. So that's the administration building, the main reception building, which is being retained. And then in blue, the proposed buildings. So just moving to the next slide. This is the new main kennel building, isolation building, small animal unit, aviaries, hatchery, and then a coastal and inspector's office. Moving to the elevations, so the cattery buildings, the kennel and puppy building, small animal building, the vets and storage building and isolation building. That's it. So, say a reorganisation, upgrading of the proposals. So that's the extent of the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the plans? Sorry, are there any questions on the plans? No. Okay. Thank you very much. If we then deal with the updates.
Thank you, Chair. Subsequent to the report being written, we have had further comment from Highway Network Management requesting a condition be included within any permission seeking submission and prior approval of a highway method of work statement. In response to that, it is felt that the provision of a method of work statement would not mitigate any demonstrable harm because no demonstrable harm has been demonstrated arising from the proposal and therefore would not fulfil the test required of the National Planning Policy guidance of being necessary as a condition. Suggested in respect of condition 9, which is the landscape scheme in the first sentence, that it should be amended to include the words including species mix and planting density, so that it is clear that your officers would have be able to approve the most appropriate in terms of biodiversity and also the landscape character of the site, the relevant planting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we have no registered speakers on this item, so it's members' questions to officers on the report, on the update. If there are any. Nope. Right, so we can move into debate. Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Fenton.
Thank you. From time to time, I visit this facility because, as some people know, I run a small parrot rescue, so I'm always looking for parrots that need a home to come and live with me. And one of the things I've noticed is the dilapidated state of some of the facilities, which are not in the best condition. Particularly, I'm very welcome as an aviary because far too many people think that pets just include cats and dogs. The aviary facilities there are desperately in need of an update. I think it will also improve the flood resistance of the site, and so I think overall it's a big improvement and it will benefit the animals and their welfare. So I'm perfectly happy to, with the amended condition, move approval.
You're a little early on that. Councillor Fenton.
Yes, I think it's a welcome investment in a facility that is relied on by many humans and many animals. So very much in support.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no other, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to reiterate, I've visited there with work, and you know, there's lots of animals that are well looked after there, but it is rather old. And I know that obviously having to plan for the flooding is also about thinking about the animals, not just the integrity of the building. So I'm sure that the improved plans will help with sort of financial planning for the company, as well as thinking about the animals and their facilities.
Okay, if there's no other comments, sorry, Councillor Kelly.
I'll only comment that it's unfortunate we didn't have a site visit, because I understand that in the past, a site visit to the site resulted in many members of the committee coming away with cats and dogs, and so maybe it's a good thing we didn't have a site visit.
And also lasting half a day as well, I understand. I don't think that's relevant to our consideration, the latter this evening, my latter comment. Right, okay, I will formally move the officer recommendation with the amended condition. Is that seconded? That is seconded by Councillor Baxter. Can I see all those in favour? That is unanimously carried. So that is approved. Thank you. Sorry, yes, hang on, give me a chance, There were a number of concerns raised in terms of item 5C in the earlier debate that were not directly planning matters, but I think I'm aware that there is some feeling that we should be making a independent recommendation to ask officers to see or relevant officers in transport and our economic development teams to see if we can approach the designer outlet to see if we can resolve some of the obvious problems that prompted that application. If
Chair, I understand that meetings are arranged with the Park and Ride team and the director regarding the site. So things are in hand, but it's, I say, outside of that particular planning application.
Yes, yes. Well, hopefully there will, a willingness to work together. Needs all parties to try and achieve, I think, the outcome that we would all like to see. But as I say, if we can pass that as an additional request to officers to facilitate that. Can I see all those in favour? Okay, that's, sorry, Chris, I was too fast.
That be officers, or you as chair, and vice chair?
I will take some guidance. I assume it's something that we simply minute and gets passed. The minute can be sent to the relevant officers. I mean, I know this happens at main planning committee. I've not actually experienced it in terms of these additional recommendations.
Well, when we've done in the recent past, the chair has written, but
Right.
alternatively,
Okay.
if it's minuted, that can be forwarded on to the
Right.
relevant.
I will
people.
write as chair if that's the way that it is normally done. To vote differently if I'd have known that before.
And if you want to run it past the vice chair, by all means do so.
Right.
But just to be clear what we're voting on.
Yes, yes. Basically that the chair and with the assistance of the vice chair, write to the relevant officers to encourage discussions with the designer outlet in terms of seeking to resolve the congestion and operational issues in the site and to maximise sustainable access to the site. If I summarise the nature of the earlier discussions adequately. Yes, okay, thank you very much. I see your agreement to that. Yes, okay, thank you. Right, okay, I think that concludes item 5. Item 6, urgent business. I am not aware of any urgent business. No. Okay, so that concludes the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance, participation, and the orderly and well debated conduct of this meeting. Thank you.